This is a Spike Brewing stainless steel CF15 17-gallon fermenter. Now, when I was on the market for looking for one of these fermenters, I wish there was somebody that had done a video review so I could make a more informed decision. So hopefully somebody out there finds this review useful. So that review is coming up next. So when you receive this fermenter, there's not very much assembly involved in it. All you have to do is attach all your tri-clamp fittings, your blow-off tube, right angle tri-clamp connection. There is a 4-inch tri-clamp cover that comes with it. You have this lid that comes apart. I'll show you that later. We have this band that clamps the lid down onto the fermenter itself. This is a screw type band fitting that you just tighten it by twisting it. You have your thermometer, the temperature probe to tri-clamp, and then you have an NPT fitting and your thermometer screws right in there, just like that. And then you have your sampling port or sampling valve along with another tri-clamp there. And we have our racking port. This doesn't have a racking cane right now, but I did purchase it with the optional racking cane, which is very helpful, and I'll show you that later. And then you have your 2-inch dump port. The other thing that doesn't come assembled is the standoffs for the legs. I decided to go with casters on this because this fermenter only comes with 3 legs. So that's one of the drawbacks that I didn't like. If you put casters on it, it becomes pretty unstable. So you definitely don't want to move it while it's full. One of the big benefits to this fermenter is that it comes with fully welded sanitary tri-clamp fittings, which is a very big plus, especially when you're cleaning it out. All you have to do is remove all your clamps or your accessories, and you can actually scrub it down completely on the inside, very simply, with nothing to get in the way. It's rated for 15 psi maximum pressure. You can also purchase an attachment that has a pressure relief valve along with a gas in ball lock port. It also comes with a pressure gauge. The maximum capacity of the fermenter is, I believe it's 18 gallons, but the markings are up to 17 gallons, but I think you can fit another gallon in this lid area. The top has a 4-inch tri-clamp port. If you buy the fermenter without accessories, it only comes with the cover along with the gasket and the clamp. That port can be used if you buy the stainless steel temperature control coil. It'll slip right in there, and I'll show you guys that later. Like I was mentioning, it is extremely easy to clean. All the ports can be disassembled, and those can be cleaned separately. So that's a big time saver. There's volume etchings along the inside. It's great. It's excellent for big beers or very hoppy IPAs, which seem to be all the rage nowadays, with your hazies and things like that. I also use SS Brewtech fermenter. I believe it's their 15-gallon, and there's a big difference in the placement of the racking port. On that other one, it sits way down here. I've never had any trouble dumping trub with this one. This is a huge valve, and that's very helpful. If you purchase the racking cane, it includes a directional bar, so you can see in which direction your racking cane is sitting inside of the fermenter. Let's talk a little bit about the disadvantages that I've found with this fermenter. As I mentioned before, the fermenter comes with only 3 legs. The SS Brewtech fermenter actually has 4 legs, so it's a lot more stable. If you do put this on casters, I would recommend that whenever you start filling it, make sure the tires are pointing forward or backwards. I'm not sure what the orientation would be, but the center line on the casters is offset. It's not right down the center of the leg. So you want to make sure that that center line sits in front of the leg. That way you get a little bit more stability. And like I mentioned before, the fermenter should not be moved while it's full. First of all, because of that instability, and also I don't think the legs are made to handle that kind of strain. So it's possible that you can bend one of those. This is a Unitank fermenter, but it does not have a dedicated carb stone port. They do sell an accessory that fits right in the racking valve here. But what I've noticed is I actually made my own version of that, and I noticed that if you're using the racking cane, it seems like the oxygen accumulates inside of the valve here, and it creates larger bubbles. So you don't get the benefit of those tiny bubbles that the oxygenation stone is creating. So I wish they had one more port on this. The angle of the sampling port is perpendicular to the valve itself. What this means is, as you can see, this is sitting at an angle. So that means that the barb here is pointing back a little instead of perfectly vertical to the ground. It's not a big deal, but sometimes you find it difficult to place your whatever you're using to get a sample down here. So it could be a little tight. What I found easier is placing a hose on there and taking the sample that way. The other thing that I didn't like initially was that there was no neoprene jacket or no insulation. So after cold crashing or while cold crashing, this thing would get so cold and it would create just a lot of condensation, and there was just a lot of water all over the floor of my garage because of the condensation. But they recently introduced, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago, they recently introduced a neoprene jacket that they sell that goes over the whole thing. So a couple of notes, tips for if somebody does buy this fermenter. One of the things that you do have to install is the gasket that goes between the lid and the fermenter itself. And that gasket has a correct orientation. It's not the same top to bottom, and I'll show you that later. You have to make sure that that gasket gets placed in the correct orientation, or else this thing won't hold more than 10 psi, even if you crank down on that band here. If you do get the add-on that is made to hold pressure in, make sure that your pressure relief valve is always kept clean, because if this thing goes over 15 psi, who knows what will happen. You can have a big bomb in your hands. Here are the accessories that I purchased with the fermenter. We have the temperature control coil. We have a blow-off cane. I believe they call it the gas manifold. And the racking cane. As you can see, it has a little barb that you can see while it's installed. That way you can determine what the angle is on the cane on the inside of the fermenter. The neat thing about this coil is it reaches almost down to the bottom of the cone. So you can also do, I imagine you can ferment 10-gallon batches with this. Here's a close-up of the temperature control coil, and I'll just remove it, take it out. So it is pretty long. It reaches down to the bottom of the cone. The one thing that I don't understand why they did it this way is these barbs, they're pointed vertically instead of having a 90-degree angle. So I think most likely if you have a glycol chiller, it's going to be off to the side. So that's one thing that I didn't like, that the pipes or the hoses that run between the glycol chiller and the barbs here may get kinked because of that. They do sell accessories, 90-degree quick connect, the quick connect fittings that you can place on those barbs. That way you don't have that problem. This here is the gas manifold, a close-up of where it would get installed onto the lid there. And this is what the blow-off cane looks like when it is installed on the fermenter, and it also goes onto the lid there. Another thing that I hadn't shown you guys is this fermenter has two handles, one on each side, and as you can see there, it says do not lift when full. So these are not to be used when the fermenter is full, because most likely they'll just break off. Here's a close-up of the gallon markings, and it marks them 1 gallon or half gallon at a time actually. And the lowest it goes is, I believe, 5 gallons there. So the level of the temperature probe, as you can see down there, and that sits at about 7 gallons. So you can definitely ferment a 10-gallon batch in one of these fermenters if it's something, if you purchase it with the plans of expanding in the future. And this is what I was talking about earlier regarding the gasket. As you can see, there's a bit of a taper on this end. So this end would be the one that would be making contact with the fermenter itself. The opposite side would be where this would be contacting the lid. The other side is perfectly square, as you can see. So that's the side that goes into the lid. If you orient this correctly, then you shouldn't have any problems maintaining pressure. One neat thing about this is it's pretty easy to remove, very easy to remove, pretty easy to reinstall. So it makes the cleanup a lot easier. Here are the clamps. They are very high quality. They're solid. They do their job very well. Here we have our butterfly valves. This is the 2-inch butterfly valve, and that is the 1.5 inch. These things are rock solid. They are very high quality. I've never had any kind of problems with them. And right over here, we have the sampling valve. And this is the side here that would be inside the fermenter. And the neat thing about this is you can actually take it apart, so it's easy to clean. There it is, taken apart. As you can see there, it has threads. So all you have to do is just keep unscrewing it until it comes out. And it has 3 gaskets. So it's very easy to clean actually. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about this fermenter. So that was my review of the Spike Brewing CF15 17-gallon Unitank. The beauty of this tank is it's affordable compared to a lot of other conical fermenters or Unitanks for that matter. You can carbonate inside the same vessel. It saves you some time and it makes cleanup a lot easier because you only have to clean one vessel. I have served from this tank. It does maintain pressure well up to 15 psi. The only thing, like I said in review, the only thing I didn't like was that it has no dedicated carbonation port, and it only has 3 legs, so I wish it had 4 legs so it could be a little bit more stable. So yeah, that's about it. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this video. I did purchase the fermenter myself, so it was an unbiased review that's from personal experience. So hopefully it's helpful to some of you out there, and until next time.